Good morning, everyone. I was supposed to go second, and no doubt Rob Oakeshott is going to argue that if only we had a congestion tax, he might have been here on time. But look, it is great to be here, and to Peter Murray, the president of the Tax Institute, Noel Rowland, the CEO, and also hopefully soon my parliamentary colleague Rob Oakeshott, the federal member for Lyne, and ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, first of all, to the Tax Institute for putting on this forum this morning. It is indeed a very important contribution to the ongoing tax reform debate in our country, and thank you for inviting me to share my thoughts about tax reform. Because Australia does need a serious, dare I say, fair dinkum discussion about tax reform. Any genuine root and branch reform of our tax system should, of course, be part of a well thought out long-term economic and fiscal policy reform agenda. Any proposal for major change to our tax system should be assessed through an open, transparent and inclusive consultation process, and that is, of course, where the coalition believes that the government so far has been leaving things a bit short. In particular, any Australian government intent on advancing genuine tax reform should be prepared to genuinely engage and reach agreement with state and territory governments about the federal-state financial relations implications of any reform aimed at making our tax system simpler and more efficient. In particular, given many of the inefficient taxes that Henry talked about and that are part of the ongoing debate are in fact state and territory government taxes. Such engagement should happen before final decisions or announcements about changes to our tax system are made, with serious fiscal implications for those states and territories. And another important point I think to make right up front is that reform should of course be focused on changing things for the better. That might seem obvious, yet when it comes to tax reform it hasn't always been in recent years in our view. The current government seems to throw the word reform around to describe any change to the status quo, irrespective of whether it is a change for the better or arguably for the worse. Any good government, in our view, should always be looking for ways to reduce taxes based on reduced spending. Our economic, fiscal and tax reform effort should be focused, in our view, on delivering lower, fairer and simpler taxes, on helping to improve our productivity, our workforce participation, our enterprise, our international competitiveness, and on laying the foundations for our economic prosperity over the next few decades and beyond. It is not something we've been getting from our current federal government so far. Hopefully the process from the tax forum onwards will be a better process. Too much of what's been happening in the tax space under this government so far has been focused on raising more cash to deal with short-term pressures created by what we would describe as excessive and wasteful spending. Yes, the Rudd government commissioned the Henry Tax Review. Australia's future tax system review was supposed to be, as Robert mentioned earlier, a once-in-a-generation opportunity for root and branch reform of our tax system. It was supposed to deliver a simpler, fairer tax system. Yet, when the government released its response back in May last year, at the same time as it released the review itself, all we got was an announcement of yet another multi-billion-dollar new tax imposed on an important industry for Australia, which to this day remains manifestly more complex and less fair than the status quo. Instead of giving genuine tax reform a chance, instead of using the opportunity of the Henry Tax Review recommendations to engage in an open, transparent and inclusive discussion about long-term tax reform, instead of giving the development of a broad national consensus on tax reform priorities a chance, the government, in our view, sacrificed the opportunity for genuine tax reform on the altar of its increasingly desperate short-term need for more cash. It is very hard, if not impossible, for a government which doesn't have its spending under control to pursue genuine tax reform.